dark, a single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silence, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
It's nasty out there. There's an election on. And politics, as I've said many times, is a blood sport. Candidates dropping like flies in Canada for a variety of reasons. We'll get into some of that. Go to a rally, a Pierre Poilievre rally tonight. We're going to also show you this ongoing, amazing filibuster by Cory Booker to protest Donald Trump's policies. We'll get you up to date with what Danielle Smith is saying about Alberta independence, possibly Canada becoming the 51st state. And we'll tell you or show you or let Doug Ford tell you why he views tomorrow as not Liberation Day for the United States, as Donald Trump would have you think of it, but as Termination Day. Stay with me. There's a lot to unpack tonight.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, we're back and we're off to the races. So, we're going to bring you the latest from Washington, D.C., where history is being made on the Senate floor as we speak. It is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025, and right now at just a few minutes past 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey is deep into a marathon speech, closing in now on 24 hours straight. In fact, I think he has just crossed over the 24-hour line, protesting the policies of President Donald Trump's administration. This is not your typical Senate day, folks. No. Let's just give you a little overview of what's been happening. As of this moment, Senator Booker has been speaking, as I say, for, well, just over 24 hours now, having taken the floor at 7 p.m. last night. And he's vowing to keep going for as long as he is physically able. And by all accounts, he's showing no signs of slowing down. Reports say he's still standing, still strong. And I don't have to give you reports. I can show you. Let's go live now to the floor, where Senator Cory Booker continues his filibuster. Let's get that audio up. This is live.
The last time of the powerful moments I've had in my life with that man, that so many of us have had these powerful moments, the last time happened because of a man named Michael Collins. I know there are people in this room that got the same phone call I got, that it won't be long now, that John Lewis is going to pass very soon. He can't speak, but I know he would want you to have your moment to say goodbye to him. And what do I do? What do I do to say goodbye to a man that's a legend in my life, a legend in our nation? What do you do to say goodbye to him? I wasn't prepared. I can't say I said anything eloquent. Michael Collins, God bless you, man. You put the phone by his ear and you just gave me my time to have a conversation with the man that would soon die. The man that changed my life, that helped my family get into a neighborhood that loved me and cherished me. God love Harrington Park. The man who stood in for my father when heaven brought him home. The man that showed me on the steps of this Capitol how powerful the people are. It wasn't about him, it was about them. The man that brought me to see a president who flattered every senator's ego, tell them what they want to hear, run for president. And so I said everything I could, but the last thing I said I remember very well. I said, I love you. I said, I love you. And I said, John, I know you're going to be in heaven looking down on us. And I promise you, John Lewis, that I will do everything possible, that we'll do everything possible to make you proud.
Okay, so I'm not gonna stick with this.
Civil rights generation is starting to.
We could sit here all night, maybe, and just listen to whatever he has to say. But we'll maybe dip back in here. So we will keep tabs on that. It's an important story. History in the making. Now, to be clear, this isn't technically a filibuster in the classic sense. Booker isn't blocking a specific bill or vote. Instead, it's bold, dramatic stand against what he calls a crisis in America under President Trump's second term. He's targeting everything from cuts to Medicaid and Social Security to immigration crackdowns and what he's described as reckless moves by Trump and his ally, Elon Musk. Booker's been reading letters from constituents, quoting civil rights icon John Lewis, and calling out what he sees as harm to everyday Americans, grandmothers, disabled kids, you name it. So, well, he's been at it now, as I said, just over 24 hours. And just over 45 minutes ago, he was still holding the floor, getting into this whole new narrative that you just heard right there. So you've got, and now you've got fellow Democrats like Tim Kaine, Chris Murphy, and they've popped in with questions to give him brief breaks, which is a classic Senate tactic. But he's the one carrying this, fueled by what he called fuel in the tank. And it was around the 15-hour mark. He came out and said, "I've got fuel in the tank, man." And he's proving it. His voice is hoarse, as you can hear, but unwavering. It's still ringing out, being live streamed to thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. And as you can see, we're picking his feed up directly off his channel through YouTube and then just sharing clips of it with you here tonight. So the impact of this, well, it's already delayed a vote on Senator Kaine's resolution against Trump's tariffs, pushed to tomorrow. Kaine says, though, he's cheering Booker on, and Senate staff and Capitol Police are working overtime, and Democrats are rallying around this as a show of resistance. Republicans, well, Senator Ted Cruz, whose own 21-hour speech back in 2013 just got eclipsed, posted a crying Homer Simpson meme. So take that as you will. We're keeping our ears on this live feed tonight, folks. So, as I say, we will dip back in as needed and keep you up to date. Now, Pierre Poilievre out in Borden Carlton, Prince Edward Island tonight for a rally. And now I have to say this is not going to be live because he just wrapped up. But what we're going to do is I'm going to backtrack here just a little bit, and we'll bring you a couple of just bring you a little bit of what he was saying just moments ago out of PEI. This is fresh, and let's go out there now. Hang on. Here we go. Okay.
We're going to bring it home because we don't want a fourth Liberal term of rising costs and crime and falling economy under America's thumb. Rather, we need a new Conservative government that will put Canada first by axing taxes, building homes, unleashing our resources, and bringing home to Canada our jobs and production so that we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength. Le choix devant nous, c'est est-ce qu'on veut un quatrième mandat des libéraux après une décennie perdue, des coûts qui sont élevés, une économie qui est en baisse et plus dépendante que jamais sur les Américains, ou est-ce qu'on a besoin d'un nouveau gouvernement pour mettre le Canada d'abord, pour faire changement en éliminant les taxes et les impôts, en récoltant nos ressources naturelles et en ramenant nos emplois ici pour qu'on puisse se tenir debout face à Donald Trump avec la force. C'est ça le choix.
Well, you know what he's talking about. Donald Trump. Tariffs.
The Liberals have pulled. The Liberals have. What's that? I can do it. I agree with you on that. That's why I'm here. I wouldn't be here if I couldn't. But the Liberals are going to try to pull a fast one on you. They've replaced Justin Trudeau with his longtime economic advisor and hand-picked successor. Mark But it's the same old Liberal gang, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal MPs, same Liberal strategists making the same Liberal promises, and they will get exactly the same Liberal results. That's precisely why Donald Trump has endorsed Mark Carney. He understands that Carney will keep Canada weak. After 10 years of driving our resource jobs and hundreds of billions of dollars south, making us completely dependent on the Americans for the vast majority of our exports and all of our energy, and giving $500 billion of net investment to the Americans, that's Canadian money building American pipelines, American mines, American businesses for American workers. Donald Trump would like to continue that weakness as long as he can. And so multiple times he has endorsed Mark Carney, whom he understands to be good for America, or his vision of America, even though it's not good for Canada. Mr. Carney moved his headquarters from Canada to the United States just 6 days after Trump brought in his tariffs. He stashes his corporate cash in overseas Caribbean tax havens that allow him to pay low taxes while everyone else, single moms, small businesses, and seniors, are stuck with the big fat Liberal tax bill imposed over here. He has multiple conflicts of interest that will allow foreign governments to exploit him and turn him against our own country. And just today, Mark Carney gave Donald Trump the best gift of all. He announced that his government would keep in place the No New Pipelines Law C-69. M. Carney a donné un grand cadeau à Donald Trump. M. Trump qui a déjà donné son support à M. Carney. M. Carney a dit qu'il va garder en place la loi C-69 anti-pipeline, anti-ressources naturelles, ce qui va nous forcer de continuer de vendre nos ressources aux Américains au prix bas et enlever la richesse du Canada, nous rendant plus dépendants. This bill, this law, blocks Canadian pipelines from ever being built. It basically bans the construction of pipelines. That's why we have to give, literally, 90% of all of our energy exports to the Americans, 100% of our natural gas. We can't get it to Tidewater to send it to Europe or Asia. In fact, do you know that the energy we send from Western Canada to Quebec and Ontario has to go through American-fed pipelines, then comes back into Canada, which means we're totally dependent on them even to sell our own energy to ourselves. And with today's news that Mr. Carney will keep that law in place, he will guarantee we will always have to beg for the Americans to support our biggest export sector. My friends, that is a recipe that we have seen played out over the last decade. It is not change. It is more of the same. It is more weakness. What we need now is strength. We need to build pipelines, dig mines, and take back control of our economic future. For a change. And the question in this election will be whether we continue to weaken our economy and hand over our resources to an increasingly unpredictable and hostile American leadership, or whether we bring home the production here. Bring it home. It's a very simple goal. And that's why we have a Bring It Home economic plan. Our plan starts with a big, powerful Bring It Home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building. The idea is to reward those who build things, make things, move things, and create things. It starts with rewarding work. Income tax. Income tax is the fine you pay for the crime of working hard. There's this great meme the other day I saw. This kid was in a park with his dad. His kid has his head buried in his hands. He's bawling his eyes out. He had just asked his dad, what is an income tax for him? And his dad said, well, it's just like your school report card, only the opposite. The harder you work, the worse you do, right? The more you make, the more you pay. And as a result, it's no wonder that people might say, I'm not going to take that overtime shift. I'm not going to work hard to get that bonus or promotion, because at the end of the day, the government's going to get it all. And that holds us all back. It punishes our hardworking people at a time when we most need them to get ahead. And that's why I'm proud to announce that a Canada First Conservative government will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker and senior. This is a tax cut for waitresses and welders. It's a tax cut for the retired couple who are having to pull their income out of their RSP or their pension at high income tax rates. Paying less will allow them to have a more beautiful retirement. It is a tax cut for the struggling single mom who wonders how she will pay the bills and feed her kids. It is a tax cut that rewards work and allows you to bring more home. That's why we call it the Bring It Home tax cut. But we also have to cut taxes on energy. Energy powers our economy. It's necessary for our farmers who bring our beautiful potatoes out of the field, for our fishery, for our industry that build this. Here we are in McDougall Steel. They make steel here, the steel that is literally the bones of our economic civilization. The steel workers. Now, the Liberal carbon tax has raised the cost of energy over the last 7 years. Now, as I said, today, 28 days before the election, they hide it from the pump and expect you to be grateful that they're going to give you a temporary holiday from the tax that they imposed on you in the first place, while they kept in place the carbon tax law, which will allow them to flip a switch the day after the election and reinstate the tax all over again. What's more is that they've kept the tax throughout this month and into the future rising on Canadian industry in the hopes that you won't notice, because of course they think that you just don't know that a steel company that pays a carbon tax will have to obviously pass it on to the automaker and therefore onto your car or onto the apartment complex that helps hold up that building, and then therefore in higher rent to the people, or in lower wages to the workers who work in the industrial sectors. Meanwhile, the Americans have no carbon tax whatsoever. So here we have it. While Trump is tariffing our heavy industry, Carney is hitting the same businesses with higher industrial taxes, which will force their production south of the border, making us yet more helpless and more reliant on the Americans. And so I'm here today to say that a Canada First Conservative government will make a big change, and that is we will axe the tax for everyone, for everything, for real, for good, for a change. And then we've got to cut taxes on investment. Investment is everything you see in all of these machines. That takes investment. You don't have these machines, then you can't make the products that come out of this factory or warehouse. It is the trucks that our carpenters drive around. It is the tools that are used, the assembly line materials, the CNC, the conveyor belts. All of that requires investment. In Canada today, we get about $15,000 of investment for every worker. In the States, it's $28,000. So the American, and that's both in US dollars. So the American worker is getting almost twice as much tools and technology accumulating. No wonder that in an hour worked, Americans generate 83 US dollars. In an hour worked here in Canada, it's 53 US dollars. So they're making more money faster, even though we have better and smarter workers. That's because they have more investment. So how do we fix that? We have to cut taxes on investment. And that's why I've announced 2 measures to do that. First of all, I will bring in what I call the Canadian reinvestment tax cut. Zero capital gains tax if you reinvest the money in Canada. Bring it home. Bring it home. You can imagine a retiring small businessman, instead of putting the money in the American stock market, he'll realize that if he reinvests it in the Canadian side of the border, he can defer his capital gains tax. A Canadian farmer who might retire and sell the farm to his kids can reinvest that money maybe in a local restaurant, or he could buy Canadian stocks which fund Canadian businesses that hire Canadian workers and buy Canadian machines. This will bring our money home. It will allow our people to roll over their investments and grow more and more. The government's still going to get its pound of salt. Later on, when you cash out for good, well, that's when you'll pay the capital gains tax. But at that point, there'll be more money and more wealth generated, so the government will actually get more in the long run, and in the meantime, we'll get more investment to supercharge our economy and bring home the investment it takes to stand up to the Americans. And for the elderly widow who might be inheriting some money from her newly deceased husband, or you know, have a one-time disposition, or a couple that sells their home to downsize and they have extra money, we're going to allow you an extra $5,000 to put into your tax-free savings account each year, as long as that $5,000 is exclusively invested right here in Canada. And then we're going to tackle the inflation tax. The inflation tax is a sneaky tax, an immoral tax, and an unfair tax. The inflation tax happens when the government prints money to pay its bills. You know, they run out of cash. They don't want you to know that they're taking more from you. So instead of raising the tax rate through a vote in Parliament that would generate a lot of controversy, they simply have the central bank produce more and more and more cash that goes into the economy, but first into their coffers. The very wealthy get their hands on it through the financial system. Everything inflates in price, as we saw over the last 4 years. We saw that the Liberals increased our money supply from $1.8 trillion to $2.5 trillion, a 40% increase, during which time our economy only grew by 4%. In other words, the money was growing 10 times faster than the stuff that money buys. If you have an economy with 10 potatoes and $10, it's a buck a potato. If you increase the money supply to 20, but you still only have 10 potatoes, you're not twice as rich. It's just that each potato costs twice as much. Now, that might be good for Alex over there. But the truth is, it would means that you lose your purchasing power as the government creates more cash and devalues the purchasing power of the dollars that you earn. The cause, though, is over government spending. Government is nearly doubled in size in the last 10 years. They've doubled the national debt, increasing it to over $1 trillion. We need to rein in out-of-control government spending. And so we will, yes, we will. We will cut bureaucracy, consultants. We will cut back on useless foreign aid that is directed to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. And we'll bring in a common sense dollar for dollar law, very simple principle. It's the way single moms, small businesses, and seniors run their household budgets. If they want to spend...
Okay, I think we're going to pull out of that for now. I think we've listened to enough electioneering for the moment. Let's go back to Cory Booker, still speaking. Here we go.
And I wish my Republican colleagues would hold more hearings about that. These are programs that they like. I saw that with USAID. I worked with Marco Rubio on some of that programs and those investments that are now been cut and clawed back. So it's a separation of powers issues. It's an offense to the common goals that we share in this community of leaders. But the second reason it bothers me is an article I read hours ago by Fareed Zakaria. And he talked about what's happening to a nation that cuts so dramatically what is one of the best taxpayer investment dollars in biomedical sciences.
Okay. You can hear the voice is strained. He has now been at it. He's going 24 and a half hours straight. It's amazing with his stamina. Okay. We'll continue to come back and check in on that stuff. But the candidates, as I said at the beginning of the program, we're going to get into this JFK stuff too, because there's a new call to reopen the John F. Kennedy assassination investigation. But yeah, candidates dropping like flies, they are, in the Canadian election. Let me just get my notes up here. So, yeah. So we're just over a week into this 45th federal election campaign. And yeah, things are heating up or shaking up. So tonight we're talking about the candidates who've dropped out from the conservative and liberal camps, especially those bowing out in the last 3 days. It's a wild ride, so let's get into this. First up, the conservatives. Pierre Poilievre's team started strong with 279 nominated candidates as of last week, but not everyone's sticking around. Over the past few days, we've seen at least 2 notable exits. One's confirmed. Jesse Sahota, a law enforcement officer running in Brampton East, stepped down yesterday, March 31st. Why? Well, posts on X and early reports suggest it was over past comments, something about social media posts from years back that didn't align with the party's Canada First vibe. The Conservatives haven't officially confirmed the exact reason, but word is they've vetted hard and fast to keep the slate clean. Then just this morning, there's buzz about a second dropout. Rumors point to Aaron Gunn, a conservative filmmaker out in British Columbia. And no official word yet, but X is lighting up with claims, and it's tied to a controversial documentary clip, or it's clips that he made just before the campaign. So we're still chasing down confirmation on that. Now, over to the Liberals. Prime Minister Mark Carney's crew had 192 candidates locked in last week, but they're not immune to the dropout bug either. In the last 3 days, we've got 1 confirmed exit and another brewing. A candidate in an Ontario riding, named still under wraps pending party statement, pulled out after old tweets surfaced criticizing Carney's carbon tax flip-flop. The Liberals are trying to ride this nationalist wave against Trump's tariffs, and that kind of dissent didn't fit the Canada Strong script. And then today, there's chatter about this second Liberal hopeful in Quebec dropping out, possibly over a clash with the party's stance on trade diversification. Again, it's fresh off the wire, and we're waiting for Liberal HQ to spill the beans. Now, looking broader, both parties have been shedding candidates since the writ dropped on March 23rd. For the Conservatives, beyond these recent ones, there was Billy Morin, former chief of the Anak Cree Nation, who exited early last week. The reason, reports say, it was a mix of personal commitments and pressure over past leadership disputes, not campaign-ending stuff, but enough to step back. The Liberals, meanwhile, lost a couple earlier too, like a Nova Scotia candidate who bailed mid-March after deciding the rushed timeline wasn't for them. And that was before Carney's snap election call, mind you. Now, what's driving all this? Well, it's a high-stakes race, of course, neck and neck at about 39% each in the latest Abacus poll, and neither side wants baggage. Trump's tariffs and annexation threats have everyone on edge nationwide, so parties are quick to cut anyone who might trip up the narrative. Past comments, policy flip-flops, or just cold feet in a 37-day sprint. It's all fair game. And with the nomination deadlines long gone, replacing these folks isn't easy. The Conservatives are still ahead in numbers, but the Liberals, well, I don't even know if I don't think the Conservatives are ahead in the poll numbers, really. Liberals have not only closed the gap, but they're actually in some of these polls out in front by as much as 5 points. So, we have Liberal candidate Paul Chang is standing aside in light of this controversy about the how do I describe this just off the top of my head? Paul Chang steps aside. Carney was standing behind him, or still supporting him, even though he said that this conservative candidate should be turned over to to the Chinese, or to someone could collect a bounty on his head, something to that effect. And then we've got this other one here. So even though Carney was still backing him, he's decided to step aside. I'll come back to that one in a moment. But this other one here is breaking tonight or today. And this is Mark McKenzie, a conservative candidate in Windsor. And he has stepped aside now because of controversial comments that he made a couple of years ago, advocating for public hangings and suggesting the death penalty for Justin Trudeau. Here's a picture of Mark McKenzie. I think I have him on social media. I did. No, here's, I'll use this photo. This is City News. Like I've said many times, man, you need to be careful what you say and what you do. Now, this was part of a sketch of some kind or a performance, and McKenzie is saying that he actually was playing a character, but the Conservatives have dropped him like a hot potato. And there's a picture of him. And then the reports are that the party, after this story surfaced and CTV broke the story, they got a recording of him saying this. Let me see if I have that. I'm not sure if I do or not. Let me take a little break while I rejig this thing, because I had these things queued up and now they're missing. So let me just, let me find this. I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, I found the tab, and here's a portion of the CTV report, or one of the CTV reports, that resulted in the Conservatives turfing Mark McKenzie, this Windsor candidate. And here's the audio that got him into trouble.
Voting the idea of public hangings as a deterrent.
Charles Manson, like people like that, Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're 100% certain, Epstein's, you know, and this is what I'm saying, Justin Trudeau. You know,
they did kill Epstein.
You like how I throw Trudeau in there too, right?
In a statement Tuesday morning, a Conservative campaign spokesperson said the comments are clearly unacceptable and McKenzie will no longer represent the party as a federal candidate.
So I got a call this morning at 7:30 a.m. from party headquarters. And they said, we have a concern. They called back. So this was like 3-4 minutes later and said, don't worry about sending it. We've already made our decision. You are not going to be the candidate moving forward. Don't speak to the media.
McKenzie maintains the
So he's out, and he is a counselor on the municipal council in Windsor. And he appeared also, after all this, on local radio morning program. And over here on this broadcast, he says he's not stepping down as counselor.
Live. Good morning, Mark. Your reaction to the news this morning?
Well, obviously it's disappointing. It is, and that's why I'm on here today, because, you know, it was a podcast from 2022, so I kind of wanted to clear things up. And you know, as Mike mentioned earlier, you know, I was on 89X. It was a rock radio station, and we had to compete with the likes of Dave and Chuck the Freak and Mojo in the Morning, Andrew and Mike. And so, you know, I was told from Bell at that point when I was on 89X that, hey, you gotta be edgy, you gotta be able to bring in ratings, and I did that very well for Bell for many, many years. I actually received awards for most entertaining radio personality in the entire world from an organization. So, you know, I did it very well. But with this clip that came out, I mean, the fact that somebody, you know, is pulling up a clip from 2022, you know, I think that shows, you know, that the person's kind of just been carrying it for this day, right? I have a feeling I know who it came from, and you know, it is disappointing, because if you listen to the whole podcast, you know, we talk about, and you guys kind of played the clip, but it talks about those murderers, you know, the people like Charles Manson and Paul Bernardo, the ones that, you know, 1,000% that they did something wrong. And I stand by that comment about that maybe we should have harsher penalties, at least, for these individuals. Why are we using taxpayer dollars to keep these individuals alive, right? And then, you know, we did get into, you know, joking about public hangings. Obviously, I'm not in favor of public hangings, but we were talking about China and countries like that, in Thailand, where they have harsh penalties for people who just even shoplift, and that's why they don't have high crime rates in those countries. So I've said, you know, we do need harsher penalties for criminals. And even Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, has come out and numerous times and said that that we need harsher penalties for you know, people who are dealing with harsh drugs, murderers, those repeat offenders, you know. So, and then of course, you know, we were joking obviously when I said Trudeau, and we obviously started laughing about it, right? And if you would have listened to the podcast, my co-host used to always come out and say how he was not a fan of Trudeau. And again, it was an off the cuff, it was a joke. And it's just disappointing that, you know, unfortunately, the party wants to take this stance.
Okay, Mark McKenzie joining us. Okay, a couple of things that I'd like to ask you, Mark, is one, you mentioned that, you know, when you were on 89X and worked for Bell Media, there was, you know, pressure to be edgy and give your opinion and things like this. This was after your days, sure, correct, of with Bell Media, so this was more of a project on your own. So, and why, you know, because this has resurfaced, why were segments like this, and have other segments been scrubbed from the internet and brought down over the years? But well, obviously, this one resurfaced somehow.
Sure, and the reason it was all taken down is that we ended the podcast, and I just didn't want to be paying hundreds of dollars a year to keep this stuff on the internet. I was running for city council. The podcast was over. Look, after Bell Media decided to close down 89X and turn it into a country station, you know, as you know, Mike, they fired everybody who was involved with 89X and 93.9 The River. And so I had a family to support. I had to support my family, and we ended up starting the podcast, me and my co-host at the time, Chris, and apologies to him as well for all of this coming up. But, you know, Chris has supported me as well through my council run and through this. But I had a family to support. I was unemployed. It was during COVID. My wife was a teacher. She wasn't sure what was going to happen with her job. And so I needed to support my family. We had many advertisers on board, like Tony Black's Bakery was on board as one of our advertisers, and we had many others throughout the city as well who were paying for advertising on this podcast. And so they were also, you know, big fans of the show and saying, look, we want to support you. We want to support your family, because I was afraid I was going to lose my house. I was afraid we were, you know, I have a son, right? I needed to support my family. And so we were doing what needed to be done to be able to bring money in to pay the bills.
Mark, I'm sorry, we're wrapping up.
Okay, so that's enough for now. So we'll see where that goes. Hey, maybe we'll get him on the program. Maybe I'll reach out to him. Speaking of Epstein and convicted criminals and that sort of thing, I don't know if you've seen that heard about the story involving Virginia Giuffre, the Jeffrey Epstein accuser, involved in that serious car crash, remains in serious condition. It was an accident involving a school bus. Happened in a way that left her in the hospital. She's in very serious condition. As of yesterday, when I was looking, she was given 4 days to live. I don't know how they came up with that exact number, but she's in pretty bad shape. There are some pictures of her that were released online. And yeah, she looks very, very bruised, even on her neck and her face. And in this post that went online, she said that she's gone into kidney renal failure. She said in this post from yesterday that I saw, they've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. And this happened in Western Australia. She's now married, has children, and she alleged that Jeffrey Epstein sexually trafficked her to Britain's Prince Andrew and others. Prince Andrew denied the claims, but of course, it's an allegation that has shocked the world, continues to resonate in a negative way around the globe. So we'll continue to monitor all of that. And of course, all of this has fueled more speculation, conspiracy theories, many people wondering if it was really an accident. Why are they dragging their feet on the investigation involving this crash? Of course, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell at a Manhattan prison. And these sex trafficking charges back in 2019 put him in jail, and then, of course, he ended up dead, and his death was ruled as suicide. And now tonight, I see many online streamers digging into this and spinning it so that they're casting shadows of doubt on the real cause. And we will see what information comes out as a result of all that. And the ultimate conspiracy theory generator, the JFK assassination, front and center today, as Oliver Stone and others testified on the declassification of the JFK records, all those records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. This testimony before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And this, of course, the story in our thumbnail image tonight on most of the social media platforms we're running on, including YouTube and Rumble. Oliver Stone, the filmmaker who brought us such iconic films as Born on the 4th of July and, of course, JFK, the dramatization, some would say a documentary, but it is a version of what might have happened. And who the heck knows what the truth is? Oliver Stone, famous director, also Platoon. But that movie JFK, that's his biggest claim to fame, I would say. And tonight, he is calling for the JFK investigation to be reopened. This is what he had to say to the committee today.
Can we return to a world where we can trust our government to level with us, the people for which this government exists? And if some people in power betrayed our Constitution and chose the path of war over peace, let the rest of us see past the lies and let us hear what we think happened. And with that knowledge, let us forgive, but not forget the transgressions, and let us praise the representatives, Democrat and Republican, who believe with the vast majority of the American people that the truth is the greatest treasure a Socratic soul can attain in this lifetime. I asked the committee to reopen what the Warren Commission failed miserably to complete. I ask you in good faith, outside all political considerations, to reinvestigate the assassination of this President Kennedy from the scene of the crime to the courtroom, which never happened, but which means the chain of custody on the rifle, the bullets, the fingerprints, the autopsy that defies belief, and that if it were a murder, we'd have given to the poorest man dying in a gutter. Let us reinvestigate the fingerprints of intelligence all over Lee Harvey Oswald from 1959 to 1960, his violent death in 1963. And most importantly, this CIA, whose muddy footprints are all over this case, a true interrogation. James Angleton, before he died, who was one of the original members of the CIA, was talking about Dulles and Helms and the others, what he called the Grand Masters. And he's a Catholic. Angleton was a Catholic in search, perhaps, of repentance before his death. He did say, quote, if you were in a room with them, you were in a room full of people that you had to believe would deservedly end up in hell. I guess I will see them soon. This is our democracy. This is our presidency. It belongs to us. Treat us with respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Okay.
I now recognize Mr. DiEugenio.
Thank you. And thanks
This is
for
James
having me.
DiEugenio. He was on our program a couple of
I think it's
times.
an important subject.
Script writer for Oliver Stone, actually.
Sir, please turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Do I have to hit this?
Yes, sir.
Is
The
that
big
better?
red button.
Okay, good. Why are we here? Why are we dealing with a subject that occurred over 60 years ago? Well, the JFK case is one that simply will not go away, no matter how much the MSM tries to minimize it or make it disappear. 65% of the public does not buy the Warren Commission verdict of Oswald as the lone assassin. But even more startling, and this is very important, I think it speaks to the point that Mr. Garcia was talking about. Over 90% of the public believes that something monumental happened after the Kennedy assassination, that the United States went from a country that was bathed in triumphant optimism after World War II to one that was now covered with cynicism and skepticism. All right, so as you can see, me, Oliver, and Jeff are not alone in those feelings. All right. Now, what's the immediate reason why we're here today is, well, according to a congressional statute, we should not be here. And I'm sure you're aware of this because the JFK Records Collection Act said that in October of 2017, everything on the Kennedy case should be declassified, no matter what. And President Trump actually talked about this about a week and a half before it was supposed to be done. And he said he was looking forward to doing this. And by the way, if you know the statute, he was the only one who could stop it from happening. So on the day this was supposed to occur, he was visited by some higher-ups in the intel community. And under their, I believe, unwise advice, he reversed what he had said. He did declassify some documents, but not all. But before anybody jumps on me, I don't want to say that this is a partisan issue because President Biden was pretty much the same thing, all right? And some would say, like my friend Andrew Eiler here, that he might have been even worse on this subject. Now, during the last presidential campaign, candidate Trump was reminded of this reversal. It was not by the MSM, of course. It was by two independent broadcasters, Joe Rogan and Andrew Napolitano. And I think this was the impetus for him to sign the executive order, which he did. And to his credit, he added the much ignored King case and the RFK case. Now this committee has decided to back that executive order up, which I think is salutary. So hopefully we will now see the final documents on the JFK released over 60 years after his assassination, and hopefully the beginning of an excavation on the RFK and the MLK cases. It's a cliche, but it's true. Secrecy is the enemy of democracy. It's the enemy of the Republican form of government. And an misinformed or uninformed public cannot make good decisions. And a compliant press helps cushion the public from that fact. And this process leads to a loss of belief in both the government and the media. And you can examine every poll out there, okay, and they'll tell you that. When President Kennedy took office, 75% of the public believed in what the government was saying. By the 90s, it was down to 19%, all right? The biggest year drop was the year the Warren Commission was issued, all right? Now, from the beginning, the FBI and the CIA, as these two gentlemen have mentioned, have refused to divulge all the information they have had about the murder of President Kennedy. And I want a popular example, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with. I'm sure you're all familiar because it actually made it into the MSM about the Schlesinger memo. This was the memo written by Arthur Schlesinger at JFK's request to do a top-down reorganization of the CIA because he believed that he was deceived and lied to about the Bay of Pigs invasion. All right? Now, I'm sure you also know that that was censored. About two of the most important pages were censored by the CIA, okay? These dealt with a very important subject, which is the control of the State Department by the Central Intelligence Agency. That many of these State Department employees overseas are not really State Department employees. They are really CIA guys undercover. And Schlesinger cited the Paris office, all right, which is very important because these guys are trying to overthrow de Gaulle at the time, and JFK gets on the phone with the ambassador and says, look, I don't know what these guys are doing half the time. Okay, so I don't even know if we're involved with this covertly or not. All right, and he was trying, and Schlesinger's memo was trying to get control of that. Now, my friend Andrew gave me, it's bad enough that the 2 pages were cut, but the CIA version of the Schlesinger memo, and you should all know this, the CIA version of the Schlesinger memo cut it by 60%, all right? And of the remaining pages, about 40% of those pages were totally redacted. And this is what I mean. How can you be an informed person when you don't even know this stuff? You know, when you have a first gatekeeper, in this case, the Central Intelligence Agency, keeping you from the wishes of what JFK and Arthur Schlesinger were trying to do. All right? All right. Now.
Okay, that's enough for now. The bottom line is Trump was supposed to release all of the documents. And now we have the oversight hearing at Oliver Stone, who has had his status elevated a lot and has made a lot of money, frankly, from movies and like JFK and especially JFK. These guys, you know, they're in their lane here, I guess. But as I've said all along, it won't matter if they release all the documents, because as you're hearing here, some people don't believe all the documents have been released even now. So there's speculation out there that some of the documents were actually still held back, and that some of the information still held back. And I said, even if they release every last page, people will not believe all of that. And even if they come out and there's a smoking gun and absolute proof, even then people won't believe it. We will never know, because even if we are given the truth and it's right in our face, some people choose not to believe that. A lot of people. So good luck, America. Good luck, free world. Yeah. And I would say that because of a lot of this, democracy is in a very dangerous place, especially with the way that we're dealing with all this AI, political information warfare. And then there's just straight up old-fashioned vandalism. And this is also a problem. And I'm sure that most of you will find this distasteful. Here's an example of I just came across this on social media. I'll share it with you. A Liberal campaign sign being defaced. And I think this is the candidate taking this sticker off his campaign sign. Right over the Canadian flag, the F. Trudeau sticker. But it's off. A lot of candidates have problems with vandalism to their election signs, some cases just being outright stolen. Stay with me. More to come.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, a couple of things we're going to get into here just before we move on entirely from the JFK thing. This is, I would say, humorous. Lauren Boebert is a politician, businesswoman, gun rights activist, serving as a U.S. representative for Colorado's 4th Congressional District, and Republican. So she was participating, of course, in this oversight committee hearing, and this happened. She got a little confused. I don't know. It's pretty clear to me who Oliver Stone is. Maybe not everybody gets it, but there's Oliver Stone, and then there's Roger Stone, the political pundit. I'm sure you all know who Roger Stone is, right? Trump supporter. His days go all the way back to Nixon. And colorful character, to say the least. Some quite often seen on Info Wars. And what's his own podcast? What do they call that? The Stone Zone or something like that. Anyway, here's Lauren Boebert. Listen to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Hopefully we can stay on topic for the rest of this hearing. We seem to be wrapping up pretty close here. Mr. Stone, you wrote a book accusing LBJ of being involved in the killing of President Kennedy. Did these most recent releases confirm or negate your initial charge? Being involved in the assassination of President Kennedy.
No, I didn't. In the film, if you look closely, there's no such. No, I didn't. If you
Yes,
look
sir.
closely at the film, there's no. It accuses the President Johnson
Okay.
of being part of a complicit in a cover-up of the case, but not in the assassination itself, which I don't know.
What do you think that he was complicit with? Yes, sir. I'll get to you.
The cover-up. Well, how about, for starters, appointing Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, who was fired by Kennedy, to the commission itself, to the Warren Commission. And he goes to almost every meeting, and he's pretty much in charge of the Warren Commission from the beginning. Alan Dulles. That's part of the evidence that points to President Johnson's either incompetence or involvement.
Mr. Morley, I think you had something to add on that.
I think you're confusing Mr. Oliver Stone with Mr. Roger Stone.
I haven't stated it yet. Sorry.
It's Roger Stone who implicated LBJ in the assassination of the president. It's not my friend
Is that what all the
Oliver
whispers
Stone.
were there? I may have misinterpreted that, and I apologize for that. But there seems to be some alluding of, like you said, incompetence or some sort of involvement there on the back end.
Oops. Yeah, Roger Stone wrote a book. It was just released a while back. Not that long ago, actually. Oops. Faux pas. Tariffs. Will tomorrow be Liberation Day? Let's go to the White House. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt bringing us up to date on the tariff war. Okay. I've been saying all along, this whole fentanyl, immigration, secure your border, it's all a pretext for what he's doing. It's not the real reason. You could spend $200 trillion on combating drugs and fentanyl, and it wouldn't address the issue. But anyway, and I'll tell you, and just listen to Caroline Leavitt. This is what she said in the White House press briefing today.
Kick us off, and welcome to the briefing room.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. I'll ask you a question about tariffs, and then one from one members of our community about education. It's perceived by some that companies or countries, if they change their policies either before tomorrow or after tomorrow, can have the president alter what he's planning for that country or that sector. Is that a possibility? And if so, what factors the president consider in making those changes?
Well, the ultimate change for these companies and these countries, Mark, will happen when they decide to do business in the United States of America. And as I just laid out, they will face no tariffs at all if these companies choose to invest here in the United States and to move their production and their manufacturing here to the United States as well. As for tomorrow, the president will be addressing the decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off and American workers off. It has hollowed out our middle class. It has destroyed our heartland, and the president is focused on reshifting our global economy to ensure that America is once again the manufacturing superpower of the world.
So if they do something today or later in the week that's a pledge for future activity, would that be good enough potentially to alter the policy?
Again, the president has been looking at the very unfair trade practices of the past. Certainly, the president is always up to take a phone call, always up for a good negotiation, but he is very much focused on fixing the wrongs of the past and ensuring that American workers have a fair shake.
So if someone calls after tomorrow and says, hey, I'm ready to make a change, he'd be open to that?
The president is always open to taking calls.
Okay. A question from one of our community members. Katie Reeves is a school teacher.
Okay. So, yeah, tomorrow, Liberation Day, according to Trump. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Doug Ford, Ontario Premier, though, he's calling it Termination Day. Here he is on NBC.
And I'm joined now by someone who's at the front lines of what is becoming a trade war between the United States and Canada, Doug Ford, who is the Premier of Ontario. Mr. Ford, thank you so much for joining me. We appreciate it. You told reporters last week that you and top Canadian officials have prepared retaliatory tariffs for whatever President Trump announces tomorrow. Will the severity of your response depend on what you hear from President Trump?
That's correct, Ryan. First of all, I always start off every interview saying Canadians love Americans. They love the U.S. I love the U.S. I spent 20 years of my life there. But yes, we're going to retaliate. We're going to retaliate appropriately, but hard as well. As I've always said, we have the two greatest countries in the world. Let's build an AMCAN fortress. You know, President Trump ran on growing the economy, creating jobs. And that's not going to happen. It's going to hurt the American economy. I don't call it Liberation Day for Americans. I call it Termination Day because there are people going to be laid off. Assembly lines will shut down. You can't just cut off your largest customer in the world, and that's Canada. And we're at a fever pitch right now in this country as my American friends are just going on their daily business every day. There's 40 million Canadians that are ramped up, literally going down retail shopping aisles, looking to see what's made in Canada, what's made in the U.S. I've never seen anything like it.
And you said, sir, that you spoke to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick about what to expect for Ontario tomorrow, and that he didn't even know. What does that tell you about how the way the administration is handling all of this?
Well, I'm not too sure how the administration's handling this. Sometimes I wonder, do they really not know? Or are they just blowing smoke? I think a lot of them really don't know. At least the senators and governors and congresswomen and men, they aren't too sure what's going on. And to be very frank, we aren't too sure. So let's see what happens on tomorrow, April 2nd. The market's going to respond negatively. These are people's pension funds. Americans will be hurt. And that's the last thing I want to see. I want to build a strong AMCAN fortress to protect Canada and the U.S. We have the critical minerals, we have the energy, we have the potash and the uranium, and the list goes on. And there's no one else I'd want to sell to more than our greatest allies and friends in the entire world.
Well, I have to imagine, though, that level of unpredictability makes it very difficult for you as well. Talk to me a little bit about how just not knowing what this outcome could be and the impact that could potentially have on both the economy of the United States and Canada.
Well, Ryan, no one likes uncertainty. Americans don't like uncertainty. Canadians don't. Businesses don't. The market doesn't like uncertainty. It stalls investments. That's the last thing we want to do, especially with turbulent times happening around the world. You have to stick together. We're part of the family, as we believe, for 200 years, and I know a lot of Americans feel the same way. We're there to support our greatest friends and allies. We'll always be there, but we can't be under attack by one person.
When we spoke to you last month, you said that you rescinded your threat to impose a surcharge on electricity imports to the U.S. Are you prepared now to go forward with that charge if the new tariffs are imposed against Canada and Ontario in particular?
Well, the reason we did that, I want to bring the temperature down. I wanted to sit in front of Secretary Lutnick and get the whole story. And yes, he we got together, had a good conversation. But the only thing acceptable is zero tariffs. We need, Americans, and Americans need Canadians. We have such an incredible relationship together. I've talked to endless CEOs of businesses. I've yet to find one CEO that agrees with this. It's just going to hurt their economy. That's what it's going to come down to, and people are going to be laid off in the U.S. So that's the last thing we want to do. I always say you can't unscramble an egg. You have to make the omelet larger, and who better than with your closest friends and allies? And so we're prepared. We have additional $65 billion of retaliatory tariffs on the table. We've already done $60 billion. That is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot. That's the last thing we want to do, but we just aren't going to roll over. And I got to apologize to the American people. We absolutely love you. I'm sorry you've been put in this position, but we have no choice.
Let's play a little bit of what your Prime Minister, Mark Carney, told reporters today about the situation you're facing. Take a listen.
We will not disadvantage Canadian producers and Canadian workers relative to American workers. So there are measures that we can take that at a minimum level the playing field with the United States. And again, it depends on the broader measures they take tomorrow, if indeed they do against Canada.
And maybe explain, what sort of measures is he talking about there?
Well, I agree with the Prime Minister 100%. We just want to see the list, per se, of the tariffs that we're going to be facing. And then we'll go tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. And it's unfortunate. There's so many other countries that aren't our friends, let's say. We need to be focused on China, not your closest friend in the world, part of the family, Canada. It's just the wrong thing to do. We're the #1 trading partner to 28 states across the country. Just Ontario alone, 9 million Americans wake up every morning to produce products for Ontario alone. And what's happening with the retailers and other people? They're trying to onboard the people that make a certain widget. Let's bring them to Ontario. We'll give them an incentive. The government will help you build the building, give you tax breaks, just on board into Ontario or somewhere in Canada. And that's going to cost American jobs. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Let's work together. Let's be the two strongest nations in the world.
All right, Premier Ford, as a Western New York native, I've spent a lot of time in your province, a beautiful part of the world. So it was great to talk to you, and we'll have to see what happens tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, God bless America. God bless Canada. Let's get through this. All right. And I asked the Congress, Senate, and governors, put pressure on the administration. This can't move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Premier Ford. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, so Doug Ford's still out there doing his thing. Mark Carney, though, has suspended his campaign. He has gone back to Ottawa ahead of the rollout of these tariffs tomorrow, if it actually happens. So he's focused on the job of being Prime Minister tomorrow, not so much campaigning to be elected. And he still doesn't have a seat. So that's important for him. But he still has a job to do. Danielle Smith also doing her thing as Premier of Alberta. Now, she was at a news conference today, sort of a groundbreaking ceremony where they're building some new roads out in Alberta, the province of which she is the Premier. And, of course, first question from the media after her formal address centered on what else? The tariffs.
Rather large audience that we have here. Just know that you probably won't have all these questions coming in on topic, as there's a lot of other news going on in the world. And with that, we'll go to our first at the mic.
Can I just say I want a hug from Biscuit at the end of this.
To the Premier, Eli Ritter, Chat News. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
First off. I guess my first question is in regards to your What's Next post-election panel that you mentioned over the weekend. What would you say to those who criticize you for sort of entertaining the idea of Alberta independence as Canada faces a trade war and threats of annexation from the U.S.?
Well, I love Canada, and I want Canada to work. I've been on Team Canada from the beginning. It's part of the reason why I've been relentlessly going to the United States and trying to advocate for all of our industries, for all of Canada, in every venue I possibly can. But I'm also Premier of Alberta, and quite frankly, at some point, Canada has to start working for Alberta, and it's not right now. We have a number of policies that came in over the last 10 years that have been damaging to Alberta prosperity. It's been damaging to our freedom as a province. And if they persist, it is going to continue a dysfunctional relationship that harms Alberta. So I put forward the 9 major policies that I think have to be repealed after the next election. Unfortunately, the current Prime Minister, despite what he said to me privately when he was here, has now gone public saying he supports export taxes, he supports Bill C-69, he supports emissions caps. That is moving in the wrong direction. So we will get through this election. We'll see who ends up winning, and I will continue to advocate for those. And that's part of the reason why I will do a What's Next panel. We did that when when my predecessor came in to hear some of the concerns that Albertans had about how to repair the relationship with Canada at that time, and it'll be time for us to do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Just to follow up, one of the main issues you brought forward about a month ago was interprovincial trade barriers. Has there been any sort of progress on that so far? I know you said Alberta was open to signing, kind of free trade agreements with other provinces. Has there been any progress?
Alberta has always been a leader on getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers. I mean, just look at how we have the only free enterprise system for liquor as an example. We've got 36,000 products that are on our shelves in Alberta, maybe slightly fewer at the moment since we're not ordering American products for the time being while we're in the middle of a tariff war. But all of our other provincial premiers, I'm challenging them to be as open as we are on that front. When we also had 27 different exemptions on industry when my predecessor came in, he immediately eliminated 21 of those. And then there were a couple others that were added around hazardous waste and the cannabis industry. So I think only have about 8 exceptions. Others have dozens and dozens, so they've got a lot of work to do. Same with recognizing credentials of individuals trained in other provinces. There's only about 8 different professions that we have extra training for because we have a higher level of care that they're allowed to deliver. For instance, we allow dental hygienists to do anesthetics and sedation. And so those are the kind of things that we think are reasonable, but we're challenging the other provinces to do the same. I'm encouraged to see that Nova Scotia is putting forward a sweeping mutual recognition piece of legislation. I'd encourage other provinces to do the same. We're prepared to do unilateral recognition if we can't get mutual recognition, because that's how important we feel it is to be able to have that mobility. And maybe something that will make a difference to JBS is one of the big projects we're working on is being able to have truck transport across the country, not face different rules. So we want to be able to have a truck loaded up in Vancouver and then able to get across the entire province without having to worry about different weights and axles and widths and colors of ribbon for safety that is on the back. Like those are irritations for our trucking industry and creates barriers of transporting goods east-west. So that one is well underway to create mutual recognition on that one as well. Yeah.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. Anne-Marie Tricky with CBC Radio-Canada. So again, on this tariffs, of course, tomorrow is when we're expecting Trump to announce his tariffs. I just wanted to talk about your strategy about, speaking to American media, politicians, personalities. How do you see this as helping Team Canada approach as a whole? And do you think that this has an impact on Canada's ability to really have a united front with regards to these tariffs?
Yes. I mean, when we started off, it was agreed by all the premiers that we would work our contacts so that we would talk to every single individual elected member of office and incoming member of the administration, including influencers and podcasters, to do everything we possibly can to ward off tariffs, delay tariffs, or get them canceled altogether. And so I've just continued in that strategy. And I'm going to continue in that strategy. I would say that when my most recent trip to speak with Ben Shapiro, he is the second largest listened to podcaster in the United States. He's got an audience in all his platforms of 25 million. We had a very constructive conversation where I talked about the integration of our economies on everything from oil and gas in Alberta to critical minerals in British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and all of our provinces and territories. Cars from Ontario, uranium from Saskatchewan, and that to me is what the Team Canada approach is. Every single province has a vital, important relationship with the U.S. that has mutual benefit. And the next day, Mr. Shapiro spent a good deal of his podcast talking about why he's so opposed to tariffs. So those are the kind of things, those are the influencers that will have influence on the decision makers around the president. And from what I'm hearing, they still haven't settled on what it's going to look like tomorrow. So I think we had to do a full court press right to the last minute. We're going to keep on doing that.
Perfect. And just to follow up on that, you kind of touched on it, but so you're anticipating on continuing with this strategy, despite, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty about it tomorrow, but if it goes forward, that's still going to be your main strategy?
Sure is. Yep. I mean, I have a number of different relationships that we've built because Alberta's had an office in the United States since 2005. We've had a representative there representing our government for a number of years. We've built great relationships across party lines, both Democrat and Republican. It has served us well. We would have been prepared if there had been a different approach, or if the Americans had gone Democrat as the approach that we have going Republican. And that's what you're supposed to do. That's what diplomacy is that you're supposed to talk to both sides of the aisle, because you never know what the voters are going to do. And I think that perhaps that's why our strategy has been a bit more effective. We actually knew who to call, and we had relationships with people who are decision makers. And I think it's good for Canada that we do have that, and that we're able to leverage those relationships and hopefully make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take one more from the mic here, and then we'll move over to the phones.
Hello, Premier Smith.
Hi.
Our latest CTV polling by Nano says that fewer than 25% of people on the prairies are against using oil and gas and other energy items to fight back against Donald Trump's tariffs. So why do you say that if Canada decided to use our resources to strike back at America, it would spark a unity crisis when it appears that the majority of Canadians would support such action?
Well, I think it's a garbage poll, frankly, and you can let your bosses know that, because what if we were to ask Albertans or Canadians this? Would you support export tariffs if it meant the U.S. would retaliate by shutting off Line 5 and leaving Ontario and Quebec without gasoline or aviation fuel at all? I think you'd get a different answer. I think people need to look at a map, see where Eastern Canada gets its oil and gas from, and realize that it's a very, very dangerous game to be talking about tariffing energy and to talk about turning the taps off. I think we saw that when it was attempted with electricity. The result was immediate. The Americans came forward with a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and it had to be walked back. So I don't even want to play with that fire on a cross-border trade worth $150 billion.
Okay, thank you. And then with the carbon tax gone, the biggest tax on fuel here now is the province's fuel tax. Now, there is a mechanism, of course, for fuel tax relief tied to the price of WTI, but would Alberta consider getting rid of its provincial fuel tax entirely to give drivers a break?
So remember, we have fuel taxes in place to pay for roads. This is a big road announcement, so we need to have the money to pay for it from somewhere. The federal government also has another fuel tax that they ostensibly use to pay for roads as well, and they have GST also. So what we were opposed to was the carbon tax, which was 17.6 cents a liter, just driving up the cost of everything that is transported every time you fill your tank, and we're glad to see it gone. We've been advocating against it. Our fuel tax relief program kicks in when WTI is over 90. So our idea is that if we're getting windfall revenues from the high price of oil, then we should make sure that we're rebating it back to consumers. We're not in that case right now. What I think we need to make sure is that all of the retailers pass on that savings to their customers. I've been told, it's a little far away, but I've been told in the Edmonton area there is one gas station that's down to $1.14 a liter. So I don't think I've seen those prices in some time, and that's part of the reason why we're pleased that finally the federal government succumbed to the immense pressure by our government, other provincial governments, the federal opposition leader, and have done the right thing and eliminated that tax.
Okay, enough of that. And indeed, the carbon tax did come off today. Mark Carney signed that sort of symbolic piece of paper, bringing the carbon tax to zero effectively as soon as he became prime minister. And indeed, today, the carbon tax is off. As a result, there it is. That's Ontario today, $1.22 a liter. Yesterday, the price of gasoline where I live was $1.59 per liter. Today, where I live, $1.27. And here, I'm not sure which location this is, 122.9. And that is a Costco, where the price is generally a little bit less than it is elsewhere. So $1.22 per liter, 3.78 liters per gallon is the way to do the conversion. And then, of course, you have to convert the currency as well to figure out comparison U.S. versus Canada cost of fuel. I won't do it for you here. The point is, we've seen the price drop as much as 20 cents per liter overnight as a result of the carbon tax coming off. And that is, as some people are saying, no April Fool's Day joke. But then again, some people are saying it is an April Fool's Day joke. They're saying that it is actually nothing more than an election trick. And there's all kinds of confusion out there about what's going to happen with these tariffs. Now, maybe we'll get enough clarification for everything to move forward tomorrow, but with the broad scope of what Trump is planning to do and effectively announced in full scale tomorrow, I don't know how they're going to implement this so quickly, unless it's a very simplified approach, because you're dealing with virtually everything produced coming from Canada and Mexico and elsewhere into the United States starting tomorrow. And it doesn't sound to me from reports like this like anybody really knows what the heck is really going on. So how are they going to cope at the border with all of the adjustments that will be needed to do all the calculations and figure out exactly how much is supposed to be collected in tariffs, duties at the border crossings?
Tomorrow. There's still time for him to change his mind, but we are told he has settled on one of two possibilities, either a 20% flat tariff or adjustable tariffs where the United States is implementing something on another country based on what their tariff is on us. Despite tomorrow.
I don't know how they're going to. I'm glad I'm not working at the border. I'm glad I don't have that job, because once this hits, I think it's going to be chaos. That will be part of the problem. These guys at the border, I'm not sure they're going to have clear instructions. And he's literally sitting there tonight saying that in that report, Trump could still change his mind. How do you get everything organized? Do you know how hard accounting is? How are businesses supposed to plan? How are businesses supposed to cope? You don't know how to get your paperwork ready. You won't know what your dollar figures are going to be. Brokers, customs brokers are going to be pulling their hair out this week. I'm sure they already are and have been. We saw it a month ago when the tariffs were on for a day and then back off. Farmers sending cattle over the border. I told you it cost one guy around here thousands and thousands of dollars. If he had waited a day later, the tariffs came off, he wouldn't have had to pay. It's insane. It's the instability alone that is a big part of the problem. It's not good for the economy, not good for the future. It's just not good. A lot of confusion about everything going on as well with these deportations. And that's why one of the main reasons Cory Booker is on the floor still talking tonight. Is he still talking? Let me just check in. Let's see where he's at. Cory Booker, where are you? I may have lost the feed. I'm not sure. I'll get it queued up here again in a minute. We'll find out what's going on with him. But I don't know if you've seen this, but they made another mistake. Another American deported to an El Salvador prison. Here's, I believe this is CBS. This is the CBS version of this report. Right here, Trump ICE official admits administrative error in deporting man to El Salvador prison. So they admitted in this court filing yesterday that an administrative error and an oversight resulted in a Salvadoran man's deportation and imprisonment in a supermax prison in El Salvador, despite a legal order prohibiting his removal there. Acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Field Officer Director Robert Cerna said that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was removed from the U.S. March 15th as part of a series of deportation flights and sent hundreds of alleged gang members to this prison in El Salvador, even though an immigration judge had granted him a legal protection from deportation. So just to be clear and clarify what I said, he's not an American citizen, but he had legal protection in the United States from being deported. And then those flights are at the center of this court battle between the Justice Department and U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg, who blocked further deportations of alleged Tren de Aragua gang members under the Trump administration's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. So this guy shouldn't have been sent down there, but he was. And this is not the only case like this. There are other incidents already of people who have been deported, weren't supposed to be. It says here, Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland alongside his wife and their disabled 5-year-old son, both of whom are U.S. citizens, according to court filings submitted by his lawyers. Before he was arrested by ICE, Abrego Garcia was routinely attending check-ins with the agency, the filings said. His lawyers said he has no criminal record in the U.S., and the U.S. government has not disputed that. In 2019, Garcia was standing outside of a Home Depot in Hyattsville, Maryland, soliciting work with 3 other men when he was arrested. His attorney said he was questioned about whether he was a gang member, and when he told police he was not, the police said they didn't believe him and they were calling ICE. And then during immigration proceedings, his attorney said the only evidence the government provided in support of his gang affiliation was that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie, and that a confidential informant said he was an active MS-13 member in a branch of the gang that operates on Long Island, New York. And his attorneys say he has never lived there. So this immigration judge ruled that this testimony against him was proven unreliable or something. In any event, he was given protection not to be deported, but they picked him up and shipped him out anyway. And even though he was deported illegally, it's my understanding that the American government is not making any efforts, and they're not going to be taking any efforts to have him sent back to the United States. Vice President J.D. Vance responded to media reports about the deportation on social media, saying, it is telling that the entire American media is going to run a propaganda operation today, making you think an innocent father of 3 was apprehended by a gulag, adding that Garcia is, quote, an illegal immigrant with no right to be in our country, which I think is demonstrably not true based on the legal protections that he was afforded by the courts. I think this is a mild example of compared to a couple of the others, including that disabled child that was sort of scooped up there for a while. That was another story from about a week ago. Well, we'll see how that unfolds. As I said a long time ago, I've always been worried about the way this was going to be handled, and it's not kind. I'll put it that way. So yeah, Mark Carney pausing his campaign as Trump set to give us all the details apparently tomorrow. We'll see where that goes. I showed you that fact sheet on the auto tariffs. Effectively, it nullifies the threat of the 25% tariff. But will he follow through in that way? Again, we have to wait until tomorrow. And he could change his mind, according to that report on Fox. Absolute chaos. Not good for the economy. Markets need stability. Now, Doug Ford also, talking about the future, he wants to build tunnels. He announced this huge tunnel project in Toronto to tunnel underneath and create new lanes for highways underground. Huge project announced. And Daniel Smith today talking about roads. Daniel Smith talking about taxes being used to generate revenue to fund roads. But over in China, they're going up, not down. There's a company over there that got the green light to launch autonomous passenger drone services. No pilots. It's all autonomous. and they are ready to start flying around and taking people where they need to go above the roads. I guess they're going to start with some sightseeing tours and taking people up that way. But you can see that this is probably a path to the future and a solution to congestion. You know, if I was listening to a politician talking about what I'm about to show you here in Canada, they'd probably get my vote right away, because this has to be the future. Build heliports in the middle of big cities. Don't go even underground. Don't build overpasses. Go into the sky like the Jetsons and use drone technology and air taxis and create air lanes. Start flying people around using mass air transit, and people could even have their own drones maybe. But if you for safety reasons, initially you could have public air transit. Like, check this out. I showed you a long time ago videos from Hyundai. Hyundai is on the cutting edge of this technology, and they have a vision of the future for air taxis, which would save fuel. You wouldn't have to build roads at all. You can have multiple lanes at different heights for you need air traffic control, right? But you could work all these systems out so that you could be flying around in these things, and you could get places way faster. This is the future. Do away with a lot of the roads that you would need. Of course, you still need to build roads because you need transport trucks to deliver things. And, you can still have cars, but you can have these things too. Here, check it out. I'm not going to play the music because of the copyright strike, but they're actually going to, these are going to be soon flying in China. So they've got to figure it out, man. And these are autonomous. No pilot, apparently. Just climb in and it goes. And then it's all controlled, I guess, by computer and AI, or by, I guess, a drone operator. I would hope it would be more of a computer, because I'm not sure I trust a drone operator with my safety in one of those things. But I'm sure that is the future in some way. Very exciting, I think. I think that's cool. You could get places way faster, even like in Canada too, long distances. It's like here in Ontario, every city is about an hour away from another city. But if you have one of those things, you can cut that travel time down to, 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes. Cut your travel time in half, and then you arrive and you land on the top of a building as like a air taxi heliport. Get out, walk down, get on a tram or something, or a bus, and just go to wherever you want in the middle of the city. Get back out, climb back, go back up, get in your air taxi thing, and fly on home. It would shorten the distances between cities. It would be like hop in this air taxi thing, fly at 150 miles an hour. It's in a straight line to the next city, not zigzagging through on a highway at half that speed or a quarter. I think that would be really cool myself. I don't know about you. Now, I heard that it was Daniel Smith's birthday. Did you hear that? April 1st. Happy birthday, Premier Smith, out there in Alberta land. I'm going to check the chat here. Yeah, anybody, what do you guys think about the idea of climbing in one of those autonomous drone machines and flying around to get what you want to go, where you want to go in an air taxi? CBC Brown 44. Unless you hit a moose, don't hit a moose. The flying moose. When moose fly, that's a scary thought. Yeah. Dragon, I know the Dragon. I see you're alive and well in there, Dragon. I'm glad to see you're alive and well. And I see you're talking a little bit about your doctor appointment today. Good for you. Looks like things worked out fairly well for you. I can't see everything that you were saying earlier, but I know that everybody here was thinking about you today as you went to see the doctor with your checkup there to take care of your health thing. So I'm glad that went well. From what I'm seeing, you're in good shape and in good spirits and on the right road. So thank you for that, Lord. And good to see you're still kicking, Dragon. And he says, I feel like he's in total recall with that idea. Yeah, futuristic. And Dragon says he's got a good story because it wasn't all perfect. You mean with regard to your health care experience today? Well, I'll tell you what, maybe tomorrow, depending on how things go, we'll have a little bit of a call in, and you can call in and give us a play-by-play on and your review of how the healthcare system performed over there in Montreal, Quebec, and give us a first-hand account and assessment. You can assess the health of the healthcare system for us tomorrow night. Dragon right here on Maverick News. And it is, as I said, Premier Smith's birthday, according to what we saw in that report. I didn't know that until we just saw it. It's also officially today my dad's birthday, April Fool's Day. Also, my son's birthday. Yeah. Born on the same day. Isn't that cool? I think that's really cool. Now, we have my dad on the program last night. I'm not putting my son on tonight, but I do want to wish my son a happy birthday. And my dad, too. I already phoned my dad, said, happy birthday, Dad. That's the third time I've done that. My brother also called from out west, and I said hello to him, hello to my brother Rob out in British Columbia tonight, and a super happy birthday to my son, Ryan. And we had that tribute to my dad last night, and tonight I would like to close things off by dedicating this song, Memory Lane, to my son, Ryan, who is in the car business and does a live podcast thing about cars, and he's into cars, and we share that. And I had him in mind, actually, when I wrote all the lyrics to this song. And so, again, I dedicate this song to him tonight on this April 1st, 2025, April Fool's Day. You fools. Happy birthday. I'll see all you guys back here tomorrow night, too. Love y'all. 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on the Flip.
He started with nothing, just metal and a dream. Wrenches in his hand, a vision so pristine. Day after day, he'd work till the stars shine, building a machine, one of a kind. Grease on his fingers, fire in his eyes. He'd smile at that engine like it was alive. He'd say, son, one day this will be yours. But I never knew how much it meant until he closed those doors. Now I'm rolling down memory lane behind the wheel of that old Mustang. Every shift, every turn I feel him near. The sound of that engine, it's my dad I hear. Filled with pride, with his hands and his heart. Every drive brings me back to the start. In this dream car, he's never too far. I remember my dad every time I start. He taught me to drive, not just on the road, but through life's twists and turns and heavy loads. Now when I hit the gas and the tires start to sing, it's like he's riding shotgun with the wind under our wings. He's there in the chrome, in the roar of the gears, his laughter in the echoes, his wisdom through the years. This car ain't just metal, it's a piece of his soul, and every mile I ride I feel it whole. Now I'm rolling down memory lane behind the wheel of that old Mustang. Every shift, every turn I feel near. The sound of that engine, it's my dad I hear. Building pride with his hands and his heart. Every drive brings me back to the start. In this dream car, he's never too far. I remember my dad every time I start. Through the rain and the rust, it still shines so bright, like the love he put into every late night. And though he's gone, I know he's still here. In every curve of this car, I see him clear. Now I'm rolling down memory lane behind the wheel of that old Mustang. Every shift, every turn I feel near. The sound of that engine is my dad I hear. Building pride with his hands and his heart. Every drive brings me back to the start. In this dream car, he's never too far. I remember my dad every time I start. Yeah, I remember my dad every time I start.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.